Because Kenya's Gen Z read the most significant document, as I said, President was forced to withdraw the Anti-People Finance Bill 2024 as part of a series of substantial concessions. Kenya's youth grabbed literally their sovereign power and authority as outlined in the Constitution. And if in this country, you know the 204 members of Parliament who voted yes because their hands had been greased with money, corruption, even in Parliament, are finding it extremely difficult to go to their constituencies and do anything because agencies are saying they're going to visit with them. So it has become very unattractive for any leader to be called by their bosses and given 2 million, 1 million shillings to go and vote in Parliament. Because they know eventually their electorate will catch up with them by just going to visit them. Later in the day, my big brother, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, will be coming to talk to you. And I spoke to him on my way here, and he sends his greetings ahead of his coming. Please welcome him when he does come. People went to visit him yesterday on his space. And when they visited Baba, we call him, he had to change his telephone number. Because the agency put the number everywhere. And maybe it's a measure of cyberbullying. Please be kind to Baba. But if they can do that to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, imagine who else in this country. Oh, President William Ruto played smart. He thought he can join the space. And somebody, Osama, joined that space. He actually co-hosted. I'm told because of that action of co-hosting, that conversation with the Kenyan head of state, his landlord has asked him to leave. Because agencies have gone to visit with him. And they are going to visit. So this concept of visiting is really, and you know, under our constitution, there's a freedom of assembly and association. So if you have the freedom to go and visit, nobody should take it away from you. And nobody should be scared. So leaders will now know, honestly, as I started by saying this is a godsend. Because Kenyan youth are saying, we are leaders of now. You have stolen from us. You have caused aggression against our rights in terms of Chapter 4 of the Kenyan Constitution. You are not transparent. You use vehicles which are gasless. I saw a friend from Lusaka, Zambia, a young lady. I spoke to President Akaide about a week ago. And he told me when he took over as the president of Zambia, he refused to buy any new vehicles. And his ministers were very unhappy with him. But now the Zambians are beginning to see what President Akaide did. We need the kind of leadership. When I was coming here, and when you get to a tea break, you will see fewer gaslers because there are ministers with you in this compound. Each of them with fewer gaslers, with bodyguards, with all kinds of personnel. Kenyans are demanding accountability. By bringing Article 37 to life, which says that is under Kenyan Constitution, and allow me to use that Kenyan example for the leaders, the young leaders from Africa, in the hope you can use this as a test case. Actually, what is going on in Kenya should be a case study for the whole of the African region. Because Kenyan youth got so highly educated, So remember, this is a country that invented M-Pesa. And they get into space quickly and occupy. They occupied Baba's space. Under Article 37 of our Constitution, every person has the right to peaceably and unarmed, that is the condition, unarmed, to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities. That's the end of that quotation. So Generation Z has done more to promote social cohesion in 1 month than the constitutional body that is charged with this responsibility, called the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, and to get all the political parties represented here, including Wiper, and all political leadership have done in the previous 14 years. We need to clap for Gen Z. Imagine they have taken over all what NSIC has been trying to do, and political parties to talk about cohesion and what have you, the rights under Chapter 4 of our Constitution, including Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, which they're actually seeking enforcement for. By emphatically declaring that Gen Z are tribeless, partyless, and leaderless, you may help to eliminate tribalism and inequality, as well as promote sustainable development for all. I believe that African youth can similarly emulate Kenya Gen Z by claiming the rights inherent in their respective constitutions. There are other ways to strengthen the role of youth in governance. There is, for example, electoral participation that ensures youth are registered to vote and empowered to participate in elections. We can create youth parliaments and councils, platforms for youth to engage in decision-making processes that allow them to voice their concerns and contribute to policy discussions. There is also civil society engagement, and civil society in this country, for example, is strong, that encourages youth to participate in civic organizations and social movements, and that also enables them to advocate for change and hold governments accountable. You know, we used to hear of the Asian tigers, countries like Malaysia, Singapore, Korea, South Korea, and others, the Asian tigers, that within some space managed to lift their countries out of poverty to a situation where some of them are even contributors to international lending institutions. And I personally believe the time for the African lion has come. And we only achieve that dream through the African youth leaders. If African youth do what Kenyans have started to do, we are going to realize a decade for African lionism, where the economies will grow, where thieving leaders will be gotten rid of. In fact, if this continues, anybody with stolen funds will not even want to go for elective posts, elective positions, because they know they'll be held accountable. The practice in Kenya has been that people head the parastate organizations and others, they go steal huge sums of money, and the election time comes and go and bribe everybody. In fact, Gen Z, I want to invite you to look at the next election. Where Kenyans were made to look so helpless by leaders telling them at the end of a campaign rally, line up. Women line up this way, the youth this way, the men this way, and you go, you have done your hand-changing 100 shillings, bribing your mothers and your fathers and your brothers so that they can elect you into office. The Gen Z have placed those people on notice. If you are that type of a leader, you don't qualify to be a leader if you're already bribing your way through elective posts. For the young Kenyans who are here, when I first went to Parliament, I was very young. I was like you. I didn't have money. I just had a university degree, gone through Kenya School of Law. I thought I had something to offer. That time, although it was a single-party dictatorship, you were not allowed to spend more than 30,000 shillings at a campaign, one single campaign. Now, our legislators have even failed to enact some very important legislation, which was envisaged under Constitution 2010. That is of campaign financing. There should be a Campaign Financing Act. And I want to suggest when current legislators come back from their, and the only institution left was the Senate, and I continue to say congratulations to the Kenyan Senate. When the country was facing a crisis, they refused to adjourn. The National Assembly, after passing that inoperative, unfortunate legislation on finance bill, actually adjourned. But they even made a terrible mistake. They said before we adjourn, we are allowing the Kenyan military to go to the streets. They passed. Move of the motion, and one contributor from the opposition side and Minister for Defense was given permission to deploy military against innocent Kenyan citizens. When they meet, I want to challenge, and Gen Zs, if you really want to complete this accountability game, demand immediate enactment of the Campaign Financing Act or bill that will come there, which will limit expenditure. That way, the young people will have hope to get elected. Because as it is, you have no hope. Because these other mandarins come with helicopters, huge sums of money, they bribe the voters, and unless a natural leader then will never be able to emerge. I hope I've made that point. We can improve civic education for the youth, which will foster the understanding of democratic principles, human rights, and the importance of active citizenship. We can also increase the number of leadership development programs available to the youth that will enhance their leadership skills, that will also improve their critical thinking abilities and problem-solving capacities, and empower them to assume leadership roles in governance. Further, we can have a mentoring and intergenerational dialogue that connects youth with experienced mentors and that facilitates intergenerational dialogue to be able to promote knowledge transfer and foster youth's engagement. I hope Gen Z will also take that kindly. Yes, you also need a bit of mentoring. Nobody in the world has monopoly of knowledge. And you know, you come armed with a lot of energy and commitment. But you may need some of us to be able to sit and say, wait a minute, I think you can moderate this approach or that approach. And this is why they are saying, Kenyans are also saying, because I heard that from Alex Matere, that they don't want dialogue. I'm going to mention later on that I was chair of a dialogue committee called the National Dialogue Committee. I co-chaired with a member for Kikuyu, not very far from here, who finds it extremely difficult to go home. Imagine my co-chair can't hold a meeting in his own constituency because people went to visit him. I visited him in such large numbers that he didn't have enough tea to give them. Time for dialogue must also be in consonance with the reality, the political reality of the time. I posit that there's nothing wrong with having dialogue, but Kenyans are saying we have had so many of these. Why don't we, first of all, we had building up with an approach that will bring about a constitutional amendment to anchor some of these wonderful thoughts that Kenyans are not willing at the moment to deal with. As a co-chair of the National Dialogue Committee, that are pending in Parliament, if they are properly implemented, then this country will say, yeah, it makes sense to have dialogue. But what is the point of having dialogue upon dialogue upon dialogue and nothing comes out of it? So that conversation, I think, is important, and I want to invite all of us to think of the best approach and the timing. First of all, who is going to lead this dialogue and when? And are we going to take into account what has already happened before? Because, again, you cannot, as citizens, even as families, a family that sits together and negotiates and agrees on a formula to proceed even as a family makes headway. But we cannot just bluntly say we don't want any dialogue. The people of South Sudan, and I saw the name Garang. That name is very, very important, very special to me, because I worked with our late brother, Dr. John Garang, who actually fathered the state of Southern Sudan, the world's newest state. I can see that by consensus, through some process of dialogue, they have even agreed to extend the interim period for another 1 year.